I'd like to invite Bishop John Hopkins to come forward. Good morning, Bishop.
Good morning, Perry.
Good to see you this morning. Would you tell us a little bit about Bishop John Hopkins, maybe a little bit where you're from and maybe some background?
Well, it's a long story. I was born in Montgomery, Alabama. I lived in Houston and Atlanta, and then entering the 7th grade, I moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Wow.
So there's a lot of story. I won't tell you about that. But in the 7th grade, I met the love of my life, and in high school, when we graduated from high school, we were both like 3rd and 4th in our high school class.
Wow.
And we had scholarships to 2 different colleges. And we gave those scholarships up and got married at 18. And the love of my life is Elaine here in the next few. Can you stand up, Elaine?
Wow, that's great.
So then we went to Indiana University, and then I went to graduate school at Yale University, and then I did a residency at the Dartmouth community. During that time, Elaine got her education caught up because she was working the whole time. And then when I was at Dartmouth, I was the chaplain of the hospital, the medical center there at Dartmouth. And then the Bishop of Indiana said, you need to come back to Indiana. So I came back and I served at LaPorte, Indiana, 2-point charge near LaPorte. And then I said, but my love is campus ministry. I loved working with 18 to 30-year-olds. So I finally was appointed to serve as the campus minister at Ball State University for 7 years. And then another bishop said, well, we need you in the conference office. So I was put as director of the Council on Ministries.
Oh, okay.
And then I went to Evansville, Indiana, where I served the large church across from the University of Evansville, which continued my campus work. And I was elected bishop in '96. I spent 8 years in the tundra. When Bishop Corner was in the Dakotas, I was appointed to the Minnesota right next to him for 8 wonderful years in the Minneapolis area. And then I moved from there to Canton, Ohio, where I was the bishop of 800 churches on the eastern half of Ohio. And I retired a 1.5 years and moved here. I have 3 sons and 7 grandkids.
Wow. You know, I was reading your bio and noticed that you're involved in something called Operation Classroom. And that just happens to be what we're supporting for our Lenten offering this year. Can you tell us a little bit about that and maybe your involvement?
Wow. I just want to say thanks for taking that particular project up. It was 1984 in the summer. I was in the car with a lay leader of North Indiana Conference of the Methodist Church. And we were driving to a meeting up at Epworth Forest up at North Webster, and we were coming back home. It was in the summer of 1984. And at that time, our lay leader was John Shettle, who happened to be the superintendent of state police for Indiana. So we were in his car. We made better time in his car. And he said, you know, I'm lay leader. And he said, I found out the United Methodist Church in Indiana gives more to missions than any other conferences in all of the Methodist Church. And yet when I asked people, he was at First Church in Elwood, Indiana. He said, when I ask people at my church or other churches I visit, what is our church doing in mission? They say, oh, you know, I'm not real sure. I give money, but they can't name anything. So he had this idea that we ought to have a flagship mission project that everybody could get behind. Mm-hmm. So as soon as we got back, I introduced him to Bishop Hodap, and he said, well, let's bring in Jim Gentry, who had the same job I did in South Indiana, and Bob Bowman, who was the lay leader in South Conference. Bishop Hodap came together and he said it ought to be a lay project, and he recommended we have some mission project in Liberia and Sierra Leone because they spoke English. That helps. He had just come back and talked to those bishops that are in that area of the world, and he said it's a good place and it's relatively secure and safe. Little did he know that less than 5 years later there would be a terrible war there. And so in 1985, Bishop Hodap sent me on a team, about 8 people that went to Liberia and Sierra Leone looking at educational sites that the bishops picked out, the bishops over there did, and then we came back with 10 schools. And there were 20 districts in Indiana. There were 10 in the South Conference and 10 in the North Conference at that time. So one district from the South Indiana Conference and one district from the North Indiana Conference were assigned to a school. And they took care of that school, some of them for 20 years.
Wow.
This project's almost 30 years old. Well, when I came back in retirement about a year and a half ago, I was back here about 6 months when somebody calls me and say, you know what we're doing in Operation Classroom? We're starting to do something that's going to develop assets, not just meet deficits. And they said much of our mission work has been giving things to people who don't have much because our mercy skills kick in and people need things. You have to rescue. But they said we need to do more development, and one of the things it's desperately needed is to teach people how to be entrepreneurs, how to take, if you're a farmer, how do you take what you raise and take it one step or two steps, and how do you gather a little collective so you can start doing things together, or if you make baskets. So the project that you're being asked to support is the Tiama Enterprise Academy, which is the first pilot to see if we can take people and train them to do business type skills so that they can create more jobs because there's a desperate need for jobs. I'm just grateful that you're supporting this project.
Great, thank you. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what we as a church can do because this church has always been very generous. I'm looking forward to seeing what we might be able to do there. So that'll be a great opportunity for this church.
You'll hear more in the coming weeks, but last night when I was kind of looking over things, I went on your website and you've got a wonderful posting on your website with a little video that explains the project. So I encourage you to do that.
All right,
Thanks.
great. Thank you. Friends, Bishop John Hopkins.